The rope bit deeper into her wrists with every breath. Blood dripped slow into the dust beneath her boots. Mary Ellison didn't scream anymore. Screaming only made him angrier. She whispered instead, her voice cracking like dry earth. "I beg you, just make it quick." The man standing over her, her stepfather, the devil wearing her dead mother's wedding ring, just laughed. That's when the hoofbeats came, distant, steady, and everything Mary thought she knew about dying changed. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button. Stay with me till the end. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. Mary's knees buckled, but the ropes held her upright. The fence post behind her groaned under her weight. She'd been tied there since dawn, and now the sun hung high and merciless overhead, baking the Texas plains into something that looked like God had given up halfway through creation. Her stepfather circled her like a vulture. "You gonna sign it or not, girl?" Hank Boone wasn't a tall man, but he made himself big with cruelty. His boots kicked up little clouds of dust with each step. His shirt was stained dark under the arms. He smelled like whiskey and something worse, something rotten that came from the inside. Mary didn't answer, couldn't. Her lips were cracked and her tongue felt like leather. Hank stopped in front of her. He pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket and waved it in her face. "This here's the deed. Your mama's land. All you gotta do is sign it over, and this stops. You hear me? This all stops." Mary lifted her head. Her vision swam, but she focused on his face. That face she'd trusted once, back when Mama was still alive. Back when he'd smiled at Sunday suppers and called her daughter. "You killed her," Mary whispered. Hank's jaw tightened. His hand came up fast and cracked across her cheek. Her head snapped teenways, and fresh blood welled up on her split lip. "Don't you say that. Don't you ever say that." "You did." Mary's voice was stronger now, fed by something deeper than pain. "You poisoned her. I saw the bottle. I saw what you put in her tea." Hank grabbed her by the throat. His fingers dug into her windpipe, and she gagged her boots, scraping uselessly against the ground. "You don't know nothing. You're just a stupid girl who's about to lose everything her mama built." He shoved the paper against her chest. "Sign it, or I swear to God I'll make you wish you died with her." He let go. Mary gasped and coughed, her chest heaving. Hank pulled a knife from his belt. The blade caught the sunlight. He didn't threaten her with it, didn't need to. He just held it there, letting her see it, letting her imagine what came next. "Last chance, Mary." She closed her eyes. The world tilted and spun. She thought about Mama's grave on the hill. She thought about the ranch, the horses, the land that had been in their family for 30 years. She thought about how tired she was, how much easier it would be to just let go. "Please," she whispered, "just make it quick." Hank smiled. It was the worst thing she'd ever seen. He raised the knife. The gunshot cracked across the prairie like a whip. Hank froze. His eyes went wide. The knife slipped from his hand and hit the dirt. Mary's eyes snapped open. A man sat on horseback 30 yards out. He held a rifle across his saddle, smoke still curling from the barrel. The sun was behind him, so Mary couldn't see his face, just a dark silhouette framed in gold light. Hank spun around his hand, going to the revolver on his hip. "Who the hell are you?" The man didn't answer. He dismounted slow and easy, like he had all the time in the world. His boots hit the ground, and he walked forward, rifle still leveled. "Asked you a question, stranger." The man stopped 10 feet away. Now Mary could see him, weathered face, maybe 40 years old, eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and stopped caring. His jaw was set hard as iron. "Cut her down," the man said. Hank laughed. It was a wild, nervous sound. "The hell I will. This is my land, my business. You got no right." "Cut her down." Hank's hand twitched toward his gun. The stranger's rifle moved an inch, just an inch. But it was enough. "Don't," the stranger said. Hank's hand stopped. His face went red. You threatening me? I'm telling you." For a long moment nobody moved. The wind picked up and sent a tumbleweed rolling past. Somewhere far off, a hawk cried. Hank spat into the dirt. "You're making a mistake, friend." "I've made worse." Hank stared at him. Then he pulled his knife back up from the ground and walked to Mary. He cut the ropes with 2 quick slashes. Mary collapsed forward and the stranger was there catching her before she hit the ground. She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't hold her. The stranger lifted her like she weighed nothing and carried her toward his horse. "You're dead," Hank screamed after them. "You hear me, both of you. I got friends. I got the law." The stranger didn't look back. He settled Mary onto his saddle and climbed up behind her. She slumped against him, barely conscious, her head lolling against his chest. Who are you?" she whispered. "Name's Carter, John Carter." "Why'd you—" "Save your strength." He spurred his horse and they rode. Behind them, Hank's screams faded into the distance until there was nothing but the sound of hoofbeats and wind. Mary woke to the smell of wood smoke and coffee. Her eyes fluttered open and she saw rough timber beams overhead. She was lying on a cot covered with a wool blanket. Her wrists were bandaged and her face had been cleaned. She sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. Her head swam and her stomach lurched. "Easy." John Carter stood by a small stove pouring coffee into a tin cup. He brought it over and held it out to her. "Drink slow." Mary took the cup with shaking hands. The coffee was bitter and hot and the best thing she'd ever tasted. She drank half of it before she spoke. "Where am I?" "My cabin, about 12 miles west of town." Mary looked around. The cabin was small, 1 room, a stove, a table, 2 chairs, and the cot she was lying on. Everything was clean but worn. A rifle leaned against the wall by the door. "How long was I?" 2 days. Mary's eyes went wide. 2 days. "You were in bad shape. Fever set in the first night. I thought I might lose you." She touched her face. Her cheek was swollen where Hank had hit her. Her lip was scabbed over. "Why?" she asked. John looked at her. "Why what? Why'd you help me? You don't know me. You don't owe me nothing." John was quiet for a moment. He walked to the window and stared out at the prairie. "I heard you," he said finally. "Heard you begging him to make it quick. That's not something a man forgets." Mary felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back. "He's gonna come for me. You know that, right? He won't stop. He wants the land. He killed my mama for it, and he'll kill me too. Not while you're here. You can't fight him. He's got men. He's got the sheriff in his pocket. He's got—" "I've fought worse." Mary stared at him. There was something in his voice, something cold and certain. "Who are you?" she asked. John turned back to her. "Just a man who's trying to do one good thing before he dies." He walked to the door and opened it. The late afternoon light spilled in. "Rest, you're safe here." And then he was gone, leaving Mary alone with her coffee and her questions. The next few days passed in a haze. John brought her food, beans, cornbread, sometimes rabbit stew. He changed her bandages and didn't ask questions. Mary watched him move around the cabin with quiet efficiency. He didn't waste words, didn't waste motion. Everything he did had purpose. On the 4th day, she was strong enough to stand. She walked to the door and stepped outside. The prairie stretched out in every direction, endless and empty and beautiful. John was chopping wood by the side of the cabin. His shirt was off and sweat gleamed on his back. Mary walked over. "Let me help." "You should rest." "I'm done resting." John looked at her for a long moment. Then he handed her the axe. "Stack the wood over there." They worked in silence. Mary's hands blistered and her shoulders burned, but she didn't stop. It felt good to do something, felt good to be useful. When the sun started to set, John finally called it. They went inside and he made dinner. Mary sat at the table and watched him cook. "You got family?" she asked. "No." "Friends?" "No." "Why?" John didn't answer. He dished up 2 plates of beans and set one in front of her. They ate without talking. Later, as Mary lay on the cot staring at the ceiling, she heard John moving around outside. She got up and looked through the window. He was sitting on the porch, staring up at the stars. There was a bottle beside him. He took a long drink and then just sat there, motionless. Mary watched him for a long time. She wondered what he was running from, wondered what ghosts lived behind those hard eyes. Finally, she went back to bed, but sleep didn't come easy. A week passed, then 2. Mary grew stronger. John taught her things: how to shoot, how to ride better, how to track. She soaked it up like dry earth, soaking up rain. One morning, John saddled up his horse and told her he was riding into town for supplies. "Can I come?" Mary asked. "No." "Why not?" "It's not safe." "I can take care of myself now. You taught me." John looked at her. "But it's not you I'm worried about. It's them. People talk. They see me with you. They'll start asking questions." "Let them." "Mary, I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of being afraid." John's jaw tightened. For a moment she thought he'd argue, but then he just nodded. "Stay close. Don't talk to anyone." They rode into town together. It was a small place, one main street, a general store, a saloon, a church. People stopped and stared as they passed. Mary kept her head up. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her scared. John tied up outside the general store. Mary followed him inside. The storekeeper, a fat man with suspicious eyes, looked them over. "Help you?" "Need flour, coffee beans," John said. The storekeeper nodded and started gathering supplies. Mary wandered to the back of the store where bolts of fabric were stacked. She ran her fingers over the cloth and thought about her mama. Mama had loved to sew. She'd made all Mary's dresses. "That's her, ain't it?" Mary froze. She turned. 2 men stood by the door. One was young, barely older than Mary. The other was thick-necked and mean-looking. The young one pointed at her. "That's the Boone girl, the one that ran off." "She didn't run," the older man said. "She was took." John stepped between them and Mary. "We're just here for supplies." "That's so." The older man smiled. "Heard you been harboring her. Heard Hank's been looking for her real hard. Heard a lot of things. Most of 'em ain't true. Maybe, maybe not." The man took a step closer. "But I'm thinking Hank might pay good money to know where his stepdaughter's been hiding." John's hand dropped to his revolver. "I'm thinking you should walk away." The tension in the room pulled tight as wire. The storekeeper backed toward the wall. Mary's heart hammered in her chest. Finally, the older man spat on the floor. "You're making a mistake, Carter." "So I've been told." The 2 men left. John paid for the supplies and led Mary outside. They rode hard back to the cabin and didn't speak until they were inside with the door barred. "He knows now," Mary said. "Hank knows where I am." "Yeah. So what do we do?" John looked at her. His face was grim. "We get ready." That night, John cleaned every gun in the cabin. Mary sat beside him and helped. Neither of them said what they were both thinking, that something dark was coming. And when it arrived, there'd be blood. 3 nights passed without incident, but Mary couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every creak of the cabin made her jump. Every distant sound sent her heart racing. John noticed but didn't comment. He just kept cleaning his guns and checking the perimeter. On the 4th night, Mary couldn't sleep. She got up and found John sitting at the table, a half-empty whiskey bottle beside him. A single candle flickered between them. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. John looked up. His eyes were tired. "Sleep's overrated." Mary sat down across from him. She watched the candle flame dance for a moment before speaking. "Tell me about yourself." "Nothing to tell." "That's not true. You got ghosts. I can see them." John took a drink. "Everyone's got ghosts." "What are yours?" He was quiet for so long Mary thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set the bottle down and leaned back in his chair. "I was a Union scout during the war, led men into places they shouldn't have gone, lost most of them. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" John's voice was bitter. "I gave the orders. I told them it was safe. I was wrong. The war was hell for everyone. Yeah, but some of us brought that hell home with us. He took another drink. After it ended, I tried to make a life. Had a wife, had a farm, but I couldn't be what she needed. Couldn't be normal. One day I woke up and she was gone. Left a note saying she couldn't live with a ghost. Mary reached across the table and put her hand on his. You're not a ghost. No. John looked at her. Then what am I? You're the man who saved my life. John pulled his hand away gently. Don't make me into something I'm not, Mary. I'm not a hero. I'm just a man who heard someone screaming and couldn't walk away. That's exactly what a hero is. John shook his head. Heroes don't drink themselves to sleep every night. Heroes don't wake up wishing they hadn't. Mary felt something twist in her chest. Is that what you do, wish you hadn't woken up? Some days. What about today? John looked at her for a long moment. Then something in his face softened. Today was better. They sat in silence after that. The candle burned lower. Outside, the wind picked up and rattled the shutters. Finally, Mary stood. Thank you. For what? For staying. She went back to the cot and lay down. This time, sleep came easier. The next morning, John woke her before dawn. Get dressed. We're going riding. Mary pulled on her boots. Where? Your ranch. Mary's stomach dropped. Why? Because you need to see it. Need to know what you're fighting for. They rode out as the sun broke over the horizon. The sky turned from black to purple to orange. Mary hadn't been back to the ranch since the day Hank tied her to that fence. Part of her didn't want to go, but John was right. She needed to see it. The ride took an hour. When they crested the final hill, Mary's breath caught in her throat. The ranch sat in a valley below the house. The barn, the corrals. It looked exactly as she remembered, except it didn't. There was something wrong about it now, something violated. He's got men living there, John said. Saw smoke from the chimney, 3 horses in the corral. It's my home, Mary whispered. He has no right. Law says different. Law says he's your legal guardian. Law says that land is his. The law is wrong. Law usually is. John turned his horse. Come on, we've seen enough. But Mary didn't move. She stared down at the house where she'd grown up, where her mama had sung while cooking, where her daddy had taught her to read, where everything good in her life had happened before it all turned to ash. I want it back, she said. I know. I don't mean someday, I mean now. John looked at her. Mary, my mama built that place. She broke her back working that land. And he killed her for it. He killed her, and now he's living in her house like he has a right. Mary's voice shook with rage. I want it back. You can't just ride down there and take it. Why not? Because they'll kill you, and then all of this, everything your mama built, it's gone forever. Mary knew he was right. But knowing didn't make the anger go away. It just made it burn hotter. They rode back to the cabin in silence. That afternoon, John found Mary in the barn. She was brushing down the horses with hard, angry strokes. You gonna talk to me or just take it out on the animals? Mary didn't look at him. I'm fine. You're not fine. You haven't said a word since we left the ranch. What do you want me to say? I want you to say what you're thinking. Mary threw the brush down. I'm thinking that I'm tired of running. I'm thinking that I'm tired of being scared. I'm thinking that maybe I should just ride back there and put a bullet in him myself. And then what? Then it's over. No, then you hang. John stepped closer. Listen to me. I know you're angry. You got every right to be. But anger without a plan is just suicide. So what's the plan? The plan is we're patient, we're smart, we wait for the right moment. And when's that? I don't know yet. Mary laughed bitterly. That's a terrible plan. It's the only one we got. She turned away from him. Her shoulders shook, and John realized she was crying. He stood there awkwardly for a moment, then put a hand on her shoulder. "I miss her," Mary said. "I miss my mama so much it feels like I'm dying." "I know." She didn't deserve what happened to her. She was good, she was kind, and he just took her away like she was nothing. John turned her around and pulled her into his arms. Mary buried her face in his chest and sobbed. He held her and didn't say anything because there was nothing to say that would make it better. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red and puffy. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. I'm supposed to be strong now. You taught me to be strong. Being strong doesn't mean not crying. It means crying and then getting back up." Mary wiped her face with her sleeve. "You're good at this." "At what?" "Saying the right thing." John smiled sadly. "I've had a lot of practice saying the wrong things. You learn." The days turned into weeks. Mary threw herself into work around the cabin. She chopped wood until her hands bled. She practiced shooting until her shoulder was bruised from the rifle's kick. She rode out alone sometimes, and John let her, though he always watched from the porch until she was out of sight. One evening she came back to find a woman standing by the cabin. She was older, maybe 60, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore black and carried herself like someone used to being obeyed. John stood in the doorway, his arms crossed. "Mary, this is Mrs. Patterson. She's from the church in town." Mrs. Patterson looked Mary up and down with cold eyes. "So, you're the girl?" "Yes, ma'am." "I came to talk sense into Mr. Carter here, convince him that harboring a young woman without a chaperone is improper." Mary felt her face flush. "It's not like that." "Isn't it a young girl living alone with a man twice her age? What else would people think?" "They can think whatever they want," John said. "She stays." Mrs. Patterson's lips thinned. "Mr. Carter, I understand you think you're helping, but you're ruining this girl's reputation. No decent man will marry her after this." "I don't care about getting married," Mary said. "You say that now, but when you're older and alone, you'll regret." "My stepfather beat me. He tied me to a fence and left me to die in the sun. John saved my life. If people want to gossip about that, then to hell with them." Mrs. Patterson gasped. "Such language, you see, Mr. Carter. She's already been corrupted." "I think you should leave," John said quietly. "I'm only trying to help." "No, you're not. You're trying to feel superior. Now get off my land." Mrs. Patterson drew herself up. "The town will hear about this. Don't be surprised when the sheriff comes calling." "Let him come." Patterson climbed into her buggy and drove off in a cloud of dust. Mary watched her go and then turned to John. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have cursed." "Don't apologize. She deserved worse." "But what if she's right? What if people think?" "Let them think. You know the truth. I know the truth. That's all that matters." But Mary could see the worry in his eyes. The town was turning against them, and when the town turned against you, the law wasn't far behind. 2 days later, the sheriff came. Mary saw him riding up the path, and her heart sank. John stepped out onto the porch, his hand resting on his gun. Sheriff Wilson was a big man with a gray mustache and tired eyes. He climbed down from his horse slowly, like his bones hurt. "Carter." "Sheriff, we need to talk." "So talk." Wilson looked at Mary. "Alone. Anything you got to say to me, you can say in front of her." Wilson sighed. "Have it your way." He pulled a paper from his vest. "Got a complaint from Hank Boone. Says you kidnapped his stepdaughter. Says you're holding her against her will." "That's a lie," Mary said. "He's the one who—" Wilson held up a hand. "I'm not here to debate what happened. I'm here because the law says that girl belongs with her legal guardian, and like it or not, that's Hank Boone." "The law is wrong," John said. "Maybe, but it's still the law." Wilson looked at Mary. "Girl, I need you to come with me." "No. It's not a request." John stepped between them. "She's not going anywhere." Wilson's hand dropped to his gun. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Carter." For a long moment, nobody moved. Mary could feel the violence building in the air like a thunderstorm. Then John spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "You know what he did to her. I know what Amanti says happened, and I know what she says happened, but without proof." "You want proof." Mary pulled up her sleeves. The scars from the ropes were still visible on her wrists. "This enough proof for you?" Wilson looked at the scars. Something flickered in his eyes, maybe sympathy, maybe shame, but when he spoke, his voice was hard. "That don't prove who did it." "You know who did it," Mary said. "Everyone knows. But nobody wants to say it because Hank pays you off." Wilson's face went red. "Watch your mouth, girl." "It's true, my mama told me. She said you and half the men in town were in Hank's pocket." "Your mama was sick. She didn't know what she was saying." "She wasn't sick. She was poisoned." Wilson shook his head. "I don't have time for conspiracy theories. Now you can come peaceful, or I can arrest Carter for kidnapping. Your choice." Mary looked at John. His jaw was clenched tight. She could see him calculating, weighing options. "It's okay," she said quietly. "I'll go." "Mary, I'll go, but this isn't over." She walked to Wilson's horse. The sheriff helped her up and then climbed on behind her. John stood on the porch, his fists clenched, watching them ride away. Mary looked back once. John was still standing there, motionless. Then they went over the hill, and he disappeared from view. Wilson took her back to town, back to the house that used to be hers. Hank was waiting on the porch, smiling. "There's my girl," he said. "I was so worried." Mary said nothing. Wilson helped her down from the horse. "She's all yours, Boone. Try to keep better track of her this time." "Oh, I will." Hank's smile widened. "I surely will." Wilson tipped his hat and rode off. Mary stood in the yard looking at the house. Nothing had changed, but everything felt different, corrupted. Hank grabbed her arm. "Inside, now." He dragged her through the door and threw her into a chair. Mary looked around. The furniture was the same. The curtains her mama had made still hung in the windows, but there were whiskey bottles everywhere, and the place smelled like unwashed men. Two of Hank's hired hands sat at the table playing cards. They looked up when Mary entered, their eyes crawling over her. "Boys, this is my stepdaughter, Mary. She's going to be staying with us from now on." "Pleasure," one of them said. He was missing teeth. Hank pulled a chair close to Mary and sat down. His breath smelled like rot gut. "Now then, let's have a talk about your future." "I'm not signing anything." "Oh, I think you will, because if you don't, I'm going to ride back to Carter's place and burn it to the ground, with him in it." Mary's blood went cold. "You wouldn't. Try me. I got the sheriff in my pocket. I got witnesses who'll say whatever I tell them to say. Carter will die, and there won't be nothing you can do about it." He pulled out the deed again. It was wrinkled now, stained with God knew what. "Sign it, and I'll let him live." Mary stared at the paper. She thought about John, about everything he'd done for her, about how he'd stayed when anyone else would have run. She took the pen. "Smart girl," Hank said. Mary signed her name at the bottom. Her hand shook, but she made herself write clearly. Hank snatched the paper away and laughed. "Finally, after all this time." He folded it carefully and put it in his vest. "You just made me a very rich man, darling." Mary looked at him. "I hope it's worth it." "Oh, it is. Believe me, it is." He stood and walked to the door. "Boys, watch her. She tries to run, you stop her. Use whatever force necessary." The two men nodded. Hank left, still laughing. Mary sat in the chair and stared at her hands. She'd just given up everything her mama had built, everything she'd fought for, but John was alive, and as long as he was alive, there was still hope. That night, they locked her in her old bedroom. Mary lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She could hear the men downstairs drinking and playing cards. Their voices carried up through the floorboards. She got up and went to the window. It was nailed shut. She tried the door, locked from the outside. She was trapped. Mary sat back on the bed and felt despair wash over her. She'd been so close to being free, and now she was back where she started. No, not where she started. Worse, because now Hank had won. He had the land. He had her. He had everything. She put her face in her hands and tried not to cry. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Footsteps on the stairs, the lock turned, the door opened. One of Hank's men stood there, the one with missing teeth. He was drunk, swaying slightly. "Thought you might be lonely up here," he said. Mary's heart hammered. "Get out. That's not very friendly." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Hank said we could use whatever force necessary. Didn't say what kind of force." He moved toward her. Mary backed against the wall. Don't what?" He was grinning now. "Don't do this." He reached for her. Mary grabbed the lamp from the bedside table and smashed it across his face. Glass shattered and kerosene sprayed. The man screamed and stumbled backward, blood pouring from his nose. Mary ran past him and through the door. She took the stairs 3 at a time. The other hired hand jumped up from the table, but Mary was faster. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and threw it at him. It hit the wall beside his head. She didn't wait to see his reaction. She ran out the front door and into the night. Behind her, the men were shouting. Boots pounded on the porch. Mary ran toward the barn. She needed a horse, needed to get away before someone grabbed her from behind. Arms like iron wrapped around her waist and lifted her off the ground. "Got you!" A voice growled in her ear. Mary screamed and thrashed. She kicked backward and connected with something soft. The man grunted and his grip loosened. Mary drove her elbow into his ribs and broke free. She ran. Didn't know where, just ran. A gunshot cracked through the night. Mary felt something tug at her dress. She kept running. More shots, men yelling, dogs barking. Mary's lungs burned. Her legs felt like lead. She couldn't keep this up much longer. Then she saw it. A horse tied to a tree 50 yards ahead. She recognized it immediately, John's horse. She sprinted the last distance and grabbed the reins. The horse knew her, didn't spook when she jumped onto its back. She kicked its flanks, and the horse took off like lightning. Behind her, the shouting faded. The gunshots stopped. Mary rode hard through the darkness, her heart pounding, tears streaming down her face. She'd escaped. Barely. But she'd done it, and she knew exactly where she was going. She reached John's cabin as dawn was breaking. She slid off the horse and stumbled to the door. "John." The door opened. John stood there, his gun drawn, his eyes wild. When he saw her, he lowered the weapon. "Mary! Jesus Christ, Mary!" He pulled her inside. "What happened? Are you hurt?" I'm okay. But she wasn't. Now that she was safe, the adrenaline drained away and she started shaking. Her legs gave out and John caught her. "I signed it," she said. "I signed the deed. He said he'd kill you if I didn't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "It's okay." "It's not okay. I gave up everything." John held her tight. "You're alive. That's all that matters. He locked me in my room. One of his men tried to... She couldn't finish the sentence. John's arms tightened around her. When he spoke, his voice was like stone. "Did he hurt you?" "No. I hit him with a lamp. Then I ran." "Good girl." Mary pulled back and looked at him. His face was hard, dangerous. She'd seen him angry before, but this was different. This was something deeper. "John, get your things together." "What?" "We're leaving tonight, going somewhere he can't find us." "We can't run forever." "Then we don't run forever. We run until I figure out how to kill him." Mary stared at him. "You mean that?" "Yeah, the law. Damn the law. He tried to have you raped, Mary, maybe killed. I don't care what the law says anymore." Mary felt something fierce and hot rise in her chest. "Good, because neither do I." They looked at each other, and understanding passed between them without words. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. John turned to his gun cabinet and started loading weapons. Mary watched him work, her mind racing. Hank had won this round. But there would be other rounds, and next time she thought, next time we'll be ready. They didn't leave that night. John changed his mind before sunset. Running's what he expects, John said, checking the loads in his revolvers for the third time. We run, he wins. He gets the land, gets to tell whatever story he wants, and we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Mary sat at the table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. So what do? We make him come to us, on our terms. He'll bring men. I'm counting on it. Mary watched him move around the cabin, securing shutters, checking sight lines through the windows. He moved with purpose now, the indecision gone. This was a man who knew violence, who'd lived in it long enough to be comfortable there. You've done this before, she said, prepared for a fight like this. John paused, his hand on the window frame. More times than I care to remember. Tell me about it. Nothing to tell. War's just a lot of waiting followed by a lot of dying. But you didn't die. No. John turned to look at her. I was just better at killing than the other fellow. The way he said it, flat matter of fact, made Mary's skin prickle. But she didn't look away. Teach me. Teach you what? How to be better at killing than the other fellow. John shook his head. That's not something you want to learn. It's something I need to learn. You said it yourself, he's coming. And when he does, I'm not going to hide behind you like some helpless girl. Mary, I already hit one of his men with a lamp and threw a knife at another. I'm past helpless. She stood up, her jaw set. Now, are you going to teach me, or do I have to figure it out myself? John looked at her for a long moment. Then he pulled a revolver from his belt and held it out to her. First lesson, when you point a gun at someone, you better be ready to pull the trigger, because if you hesitate even for a second, you're dead. Mary took the gun. It was heavier than she expected. Second lesson, forget everything you think you know about fair fights. There's no such thing. You do whatever it takes to survive. Shoot them in the back if you have to. Hit them when they're not looking. Cheat, lie, and fight dirty. That doesn't sound honorable. Honor's for people who can afford to die. John checked his rifle. Out here you do what you have to do. And if you're still breathing when it's over, you did it right. Mary nodded slowly. The weight part of the gun in her hand felt different now. Not just heavy. Final. Third lesson. John's voice softened. Once you kill someone, you don't get to unkill them. It stays with you, every face, every moment. You wake up with it, and you go to sleep with it, and it never, ever goes away. Is that why you drink? John's jaw tightened. That's why I drink. Mary set the gun on the table. Then I guess I'll have to learn to drink too. John almost smiled. Almost. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But they both knew it probably would. They spent the rest of the day preparing. John showed Mary how to reload quickly, how to aim center mass, how to breathe through the kick of the rifle. She practiced until her shoulder was bruised and her hands shook from fatigue. Good enough, John finally said. You won't win any shooting competitions, but you'll hit what you're aiming at. That's all that matters. As the sun set, they ate a quiet meal. Neither of them had much appetite, but John insisted they eat anyway. Can't fight on an empty stomach. Mary pushed beans around her plate. When do you think he'll come? Tonight, maybe tomorrow. He's not patient and now he's angry. Angry men make mistakes. What if he brings the sheriff? Then the sheriff's part of it. John's voice was cold. Anyone who rides with Hank dies with Hank. Mary felt a chill run through her. This was really happening. In a few hours, maybe less men would come here to kill them, and she was going to have to kill back. I'm scared, she admitted. Good, fear keeps you sharp. Just don't let it freeze you up. How do you not freeze? John was quiet for a moment. You focus on what you're fighting for, not what you're fighting against. What are you fighting for? He looked at her across the table. The candlelight made his weathered face look younger, sadder. For a long time, I wasn't fighting for anything, just fighting because that's all I knew how to do. He paused. But now I'm fighting for you, so you can have the life your mama wanted for you. Mary felt tears prick her eyes. John, don't. He stood up abruptly. Get some rest. I'll take first watch. He went outside before she could respond. Mary sat alone in the cabin listening to the night sounds. An owl hooted somewhere. The wind rattled the shutters. She thought about her mama, about what she would say if she could see Mary now. Would she be proud, or would she be heartbroken that her daughter was preparing to kill Mary? Decided it didn't matter. Her mama was gone, and the only way to honor her memory was to survive. She lay down on the cot, but sleep wouldn't come. Every sound outside made her tense. Finally, she got up and joined John on the porch. He sat in the shadows, his rifle across his knees, staring out at the darkness. Can't sleep? He asked without looking at her. No. Me neither, not really. Mary sat down beside him. They stayed like that for a long time, not talking, just keeping each other company in the dark. Finally, John spoke. If something happens to me, don't. If something happens to me, you take my horse and you ride north. Don't stop until you hit Colorado. I got a friend there, man named Mackenzie. Tell him John Carter sent you. He'll help you get started somewhere new. Nothing's going to happen to you. Mary, I won't leave you. I don't care what happens. I won't run. John turned to look at her. You're the stubbornest person I ever met. I learned from the best. He almost smiled again. Then he reached out and squeezed her shoulder. Try to get some sleep. It's going to be a long night. Mary went inside, but she still didn't sleep. She lay on the cot with the revolver under her pillow and watched the shadows on the ceiling. She thought about Hank's face when she'd signed that deed, the triumph in his eyes, the cruelty in his smile. Tomorrow she was going to wipe that smile off his face, even if it killed her. They came just before dawn. John heard them first, the soft sound of horses, moving slow, trying to be quiet. He touched Mary's shoulder and she came awake instantly, the gun already in her hand. They're here, he whispered. Mary's heart slammed against her ribs. She moved to the window and peered through a crack in the shutters. The sky was just starting to lighten in the east. She could make out shapes moving in the gray light. 5 men on horseback. Maybe 6. I count 5, John said from the other window. Could be more circling around back. Where's Hank? Front and center, making sure we see him. Mary looked harder, and there he was, her stepfather, sitting tall in the saddle like he owned the world. Even from here, she could see the arrogance in how he held himself. John Carter, Hank's voice carried across the yard. I know you're in there. Send the girl out, and maybe I'll let you live. John didn't answer. He just checked his rifle and settled into position by the window. I got the law on my side, Carter. I got the deed. That girl's mine by rights, and you're harboring her against the law. Still, John said nothing. Mary could see Hank getting frustrated. He wasn't used to being ignored. You got 1 minute to send her out. After that, we're coming in, and when we do, I promise you it won't be quick. John finally spoke, his voice calm and steady. The girl stays with me. That's your choice then. Hank turned to his men. Burn it to the ground. 2 of the men dismounted and pulled torches from their saddlebags. They lit them with matches and started toward the cabin. John's rifle cracked once. The first man went down the torch, falling from his hand. The second man froze, looking at his fallen companion. Anyone else want to try? John called out. Hank's face went red. Kill them both. Gunfire erupted. Bullets punched through the shutters and thudded into the walls. Mary ducked as splinters exploded around her. Stay low, John shouted. He fired twice more. Another man screamed. Mary raised her revolver and aimed through the gap in the shutters. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to breathe, to remember what John taught her. She squeezed the trigger and the gun roared. She missed. Squeezed again. This time one of the horses reared and bolted. Good, John yelled. Keep shooting. The gunfight became chaos. Smoke filled the cabin. The noise was deafening. Mary lost track of how many times she fired. Her ears rang and her eyes watered, but she kept pulling the trigger. Suddenly the front door exploded inward. One of Hank's men charged through, firing wildly. John spun and shot him twice. The man crashed into the table and lay still. "Reload!" John shouted at Mary. "Now!" Mary's hands fumbled with the bullets. She dropped one, cursed, finally got the gun loaded. More boots on the porch. John was at the door, but another man came through the window glass, shattering everywhere. Mary swung her gun around and fired. The man grabbed his leg and went down. Then Hank himself was in the doorway, his face twisted with rage, a shotgun in his hands. Time seemed to slow. Mary saw John turning, saw the shotgun coming up, saw Hank's finger tightening on the trigger. She screamed and threw herself forward. Her shoulder hit John's side just as the shotgun roared. The blast tore through the air where John had been standing a second before. They both went down in a tangle. Mary's gun skittered across the floor. Hank pumped the shotgun. "Stupid girl, I'm gonna enjoy this." John was pinned under Mary, reaching for his revolver. He wasn't going to make it. Hank leveled the shotgun at them. Mary saw her gun on the floor 3 feet away. She lunged for it. The shotgun swung toward her. Her fingers closed around the grip. She rolled onto her back and fired. The bullet caught Hank in the chest. He staggered, his face showing surprise more than pain. The shotgun dropped from his hands. "You," he gasped. "You shot me." Mary got to her feet. Her whole body was shaking. "Yes, I'm your father. You're nothing." She fired again and again and again, each shot punctuating everything he'd done. For her mama, for the beatings, for the fear, for everything he'd stolen. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. Mary was still pulling the trigger, tears streaming down her face. John gently took the gun from her hands. "It's over. He's dead." Mary looked down at Hank's body. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading across the floorboards. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. She'd killed him. She'd actually killed him. The remaining men outside had stopped shooting. Maybe they'd run. Maybe they were regrouping. Mary didn't care. She fell to her knees, and John caught her. "I killed him," she whispered. "Oh God, John, I killed him." "You did what you had to do." "I couldn't stop. I just kept shooting. I wanted him dead. I wanted—" Her voice broke into sobs. John held her while she cried. Outside, the sun was rising, painting the sky red and gold. Smoke drifted through the shattered windows. Finally, Mary pulled herself together. She wiped her face and stood up. John helped her steady herself. "What now?" she asked. "Now we wait for the sheriff, and we tell him the truth." "You think he'll believe us?" John looked around the cabin, at the bodies, at the bullet holes, at the blood. "I think the evidence speaks for itself." They heard hoofbeats retreating. The surviving men were running. "Good. Let them run." Mary walked to the door and looked out at the yard. The man John shot first was crawling toward his horse, leaving a trail of blood. The one with the torch lay still. She felt nothing looking at them. No guilt, no satisfaction, just emptiness. "Mary," John was beside her. "You did good." "I don't feel good." "You're not supposed to. That's how you know you're still human." They stood together in the doorway, watching the sun climb higher. The prairie stretched out forever, indifferent to the violence that had just happened. Mary thought about what John said earlier, about how killing stays with you. She understood now. She'd carry this forever, the weight of it, the memory of Hank's face as the bullets hit him, but she'd also carry something else, something fiercer. She'd carry the knowledge that when evil came for her, she'd fought back, and she'd won. "Come on," John said. "Let's get this cleaned up before the law arrives." They turned back to the cabin. There was blood to wash, bodies to move, a story to prepare. But Mary wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever came next, she could face it, because she'd already faced the worst thing she could imagine, and she was still standing. Sheriff Wilson arrived 3 hours later with a deputy and the town doctor. He took one look at the cabin and his face went gray. "Sweet Jesus," John met him in the yard. "Sheriff, What the hell happened here, Carter? Hank Boone and his men attacked us just before dawn. They tried to burn us out. We defended ourselves. Wilson dismounted slowly. His eyes moved from the bodies in the yard to the shattered windows to the blood on the porch steps. Where's the girl? Inside. Is she hurt? No. And Boone, dead. Wilson closed his eyes. God damn it. He gave us no choice. You want to see the cabin? See how many bullet holes are in there, how many of them were trying to kill us. I don't doubt you were defending yourselves, but Boone had legal claim to the girl. He had the signed deed. A deed signed under threat of death, John said. He told Mary he'd kill me if she didn't sign. That's coercion. That makes it invalid. That's for a judge to decide. Then let's get a judge. Let's air all of this out in court. Let's talk about how Boone killed Mary's mother, how he beat Mary and tied her to a fence to die, how he sent his men after her last night to do God knows what. John's voice was hard as stone. Let's talk about all the laws you ignored while he did it. Wilson's face flushed. Watch yourself, Carter. No, you watch yourself. Because I'm done playing by rules that only protect men like Boone. John gestured at the bodies. This is what your corruption bought. You happy with it? The deputy started forward, but Wilson held up his hand. Let me talk to the girl. Mary appeared in the doorway. She looked small, standing there, her dress stained with blood, her face pale, but her eyes were steady. Sheriff, Miss Boone, you all right? It's Miss Ellison, and yes, I'm fine. Wilson looked at her for a long moment. Did you shoot your stepfather? Yes. Did Carter tell you to say that? Nobody tells me what to say anymore. Wilson nodded slowly. Then he turned to his deputy. Get the doc. Check the bodies. I want to know how many times each man was shot and where. The deputy moved to comply. Wilson walked up onto the porch, his boots crunching on broken glass. He looked into the cabin and whistled low. You two put up quite a fight. We did what we had to do, Mary said. Wilson pulled off his hat and rubbed his head. Girl, I'm going to be honest with you. This is complicated, real complicated. Boone had money, had friends, people who ain't going to be happy. He's dead. Let them be unhappy. It ain't that simple. There's going to be questions, investigations, maybe a trial. Then there's a trial, but I'm not sorry for what I did, and I won't pretend to be. Wilson looked at her with something like respect. You got more spine than most men I know. I learned it the hard way. The doctor finished examining the bodies. He walked over to Wilson and spoke quietly. Wilson listened, his expression darkening. Finally, he turned back to John and Mary. Doc says 3 of these men were shot in the back, 2 while running away. That's going to be hard to explain as self-defense. They came here to murder us, John said. Once that started, they didn't get to change their minds and walk away clean. That's not how the law sees it. Then the law is wrong. Wilson sighed. Maybe it is, but it's still the law. He looked at Mary. I'm going to have to take you both into town, hold you until we sort this out. We're not under arrest, John said. No, but you're not free to leave either. Not until I figure out what happened here. Mary looked at John. He gave her a small nod. All right, Mary said. We'll come peaceful, but I want it on record Hank Boone was a murderer and a thief, and if anyone says different, they're a liar. Wilson put his hat back on. Noted. Now let's go, both of you. They climbed onto horses and rode toward town. Mary looked back once at the cabin. Smoke still drifted from the shattered windows. The bodies lay where they'd fallen. It looked like a battlefield. Maybe that's what it was. A small, brutal war over land and justice and survival. And Mary had won. But looking at the destruction, she wondered if winning was supposed to feel this hollow. The town jail smelled like piss and old sweat. They put Mary in one cell and John in another across the narrow hallway. Neither cell had been cleaned in months. A single barred window let in weak afternoon light. Mary sat on the thin cot and stared at the wall. Her hands were still shaking. She kept seeing Hank's face, the surprise in his eyes, the blood spreading across his chest. "You okay?" John's voice came from across the hallway. "No." "Me neither." Mary looked over at him. He sat with his back against the wall, his legs stretched out. Even locked up, he looked dangerous. "Think they'll hang us?" she asked. "They might try." "That's not very comforting." "Wasn't trying to comfort you, was being honest." Mary wrapped her arms around herself. The cell was cold, or maybe she was cold, hard to tell anymore. "I keep thinking about pulling that trigger over and over. I couldn't stop myself." "That's shock. It'll pass." "Will it? Because right now it feels like it's going to last forever." John was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "The first man I killed, I was 19, Confederate soldier. He couldn't have been more than 16. I shot him during a skirmish and watched him die. Took him 10 minutes. He kept calling for his mama." John paused. "I still see his face sometimes. 25 years later, and I still see it. That's supposed to make me feel better." "No, it's supposed to make you understand that what you're feeling is normal. You killed a man, even a man who deserved it. That changes you." Mary lay back on the cot. Springs creaked beneath her. "I don't want to be changed." "Too late for that." They fell silent. Footsteps echoed somewhere in the building. A door slammed. Voices murmured in another room. Mary closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift, she saw Hank's face, heard the gunshots, felt the revolver kicking in her hand. Hours passed. The light through the window shifted from afternoon gold to evening orange. Nobody came to check on them. Nobody brought food or water. Finally, Mary heard boots in the hallway. Sheriff Wilson appeared, his face grim. Behind him walked a thin man in a suit carrying a leather satchel. "Miss Ellison, Mr. Carter, this is Judge Harlan. He's here to hear your testimony." Judge Harlan looked to be about 60, with silver hair and cold blue eyes. He studied them both like specimens under glass. "Sheriff Wilson tells me this is a complicated situation." "It's not complicated at all," Mary said. "My stepfather tried to kill us. We killed him first. That's self-defense." That would be the simple interpretation. However, there are questions about the circumstances leading up to the shooting, questions about why you were living with Mr. Carter instead of your legal guardian, questions about whose gun actually killed Mr. Boone. "My gun. I shot him multiple times, and I'd do it again." Judge Harlan's eyebrows rose. "That's quite an admission." "It's the truth." "The truth is rarely helpful in matters of law, young lady." John stood up and gripped the bars of his cell. "Judge, with respect, the law failed this girl long before we ever touched a gun. Her stepfather murdered her mother, beat her, tried to steal her land. Where was the law then? Do you have proof of these allegations? She has scars on her wrists from where he tied her up. The whole town knows what kind of man Hank Boone was, but nobody did anything because he had money." Judge Harlan pulled out a pair of spectacles and put them on. He reached into his satchel and withdrew several papers. "I have here the signed deed transferring ownership of the Ellison Ranch to Hank Boone. It bears Miss Ellison's signature and was witnessed by 2 men. "I signed it under duress," Mary said. "He threatened to kill John if I didn't." "Can you prove that he's dead?" "I can't exactly ask him." "Then it's your word against a signed legal document." "My word is all I have, that and the fact that I'm sitting in this cell instead of lying dead somewhere." Judge Harlan studied her for a long moment. "You have spirit, girl. I'll grant you that." He turned to Wilson. "I want to examine the bodies, and I want statements from everyone who was involved or witnessed the aftermath. I'll make my determination tomorrow." "What about bail?" John asked. "There will be no bail. You're both to remain in custody until I decide whether to file charges." "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that 5 men are dead and someone needs to answer for it." Judge Harlan collected his papers and left. Wilson followed him out. The cell door stayed locked. Mary looked over at John. "He's going to charge us." "Maybe. What if he does? What if they decide it wasn't self-defense? Then we tell the truth and hope 12 people are smarter than one judge. And if they're not, John didn't answer. He didn't have to. They both knew what happened to people found guilty of murder. Night fell. The jail grew darker. Eventually, someone brought them plates of cold beans and hard bread. Mary couldn't eat. She pushed the plate away and curled up on the cot. She must have slept because she woke to the sound of voices, angry voices. She sat up and saw torchlight flickering through the window. "What's happening?" she called to John. "Town meeting sounds like—" Mary went to the window and looked out. A crowd had gathered in the street. Maybe 30 people. Some held torches, others held rifles. Their faces were hard and angry in the firelight. "That's them," someone shouted. "In there, the murderers. They killed Hank Boone. String them up. No trial needed for murderers." Mary's blood went cold. "John, I see it. Get away from the window." Mary backed into the corner of her cell. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything. The jail door crashed open. Sheriff Wilson's voice boomed out. "That's enough. Everyone go home. We want justice, Sheriff. You'll get justice after the judge makes his ruling. Now clear out before I start arresting people. You can't arrest all of us." A gunshot cracked through the night. Everyone fell silent. "That was a warning shot," Wilson said. "Next one won't be. I said go home. Now move." Slowly, reluctantly, the crowd began to disperse. The torches bobbed away down the street. The voices faded. Wilson appeared in the hallway, his face red, his gun still in his hand. "You two better pray the judge rules quick. I can't hold off an angry mob forever." "They want us dead," Mary said. "Even if the judge says it was self-defense, they want us dead. Boone had friends. I warned you about that." "Friends?" Mary laughed bitterly. "They weren't his friends. They were his accomplices. Every one of them profited from what he did, and now they're scared their secrets will come out." Wilson holstered his gun. "Maybe so, but that don't change the fact that you're in danger, both of you." "Then let us go," John said. "We'll leave town, disappear, no trial needed." "Can't do that. Would make me look like I'm protecting murderers. I got a job to keep." "Your job." John's voice dripped contempt. "That's what this is about. Your reputation. My job is keeping order in this town, and right now that means keeping you two locked up until proper justice can be served." "Proper justice," Mary repeated. "That's rich. Where was proper justice when Hank was beating me when he killed my mother? You didn't care about justice then." Wilson's face hardened. "Watch your mouth, girl, or what you'll lock me up too late for that." Wilson turned and walked away. His boots echoed down the hallway. A door slammed. Mary slumped against the wall. Her whole body felt heavy, exhausted, like she'd been fighting for years instead of days. "We're not getting out of this, are we?" she said quietly. John gripped the bars of his cell. "We're not dead yet. Long as we're breathing, there's still a chance." "A chance for what?" "Even if the judge says it was self-defense, even if we walk out of here free, that mob will come for us. We can't fight a whole town." "Then we don't fight. We leave. Start over somewhere new." "I don't want somewhere new. I want my home. I want my land. I want what my mother built." "Sometimes you don't get what you want. Sometimes you just get to stay alive." Mary felt tears burn her eyes. She wouldn't let them fall. Not now. Not when she needed to be strong. "This isn't fair." "No, it's not. I did everything right. I fought back. I survived, and now they want to punish me for it. That's how the world works. The people in power make the rules, and the rules are designed to keep them in power. Then the rules need to change." John almost smiled. "Maybe, but that's not going to happen tonight." They fell silent again. Mary listened to John's breathing across the hallway, steady, calm, like being locked up waiting for a mob to lynch him was just another day. She wondered how he did it, how he stayed so composed when everything was falling apart. "John, yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For not leaving. for staying when anyone else would have run, for teaching me how to fight back. John was quiet for a long moment. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved my life. More than once. And you saved mine. We're even. We're not even. We'll never be even. Then stop keeping score. Mary smiled despite everything. You're a strange man, John Carter. I've been called worse. They talked through the night, about nothing important, about everything, about John's time in the war and Mary's memories of her mother, about dreams and regrets and the things they'd do different if they could go back. When dawn broke, they were still talking. Judge Harlan returned at mid-morning. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much either. I've examined the evidence. I've spoken with the doctor and several witnesses. I've reviewed the relevant statutes. He paused. This is my ruling. Mary held her breath. The shooting of Hank Boone and his men was justified under the doctrine of self-defense. They attacked first. They came armed with intent to kill. You had every right to defend yourselves. Mary felt her knees go weak with relief. However, Judge Harlan continued, there is the matter of the deed. Miss Ellison, you signed over your property to Hank Boone. Under normal circumstances, that signature would be binding. I signed it under duress. I'm aware, and given the circumstances, I'm willing to accept that claim. Therefore, I'm declaring the deed invalid. He pulled the paper from his satchel. Sheriff, your matches, please. Wilson handed over a box of matches. Judge Harlan struck one and held the flame to the corner of the deed. The paper caught and burned, curling into black ash. As of this moment, the Ellison Ranch returns to Miss Mary Ellison, its rightful owner. Mary couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The land was hers, actually hers. However, Judge Harlan said again, I must warn you both. There are people in this town who disagree with my ruling. Strongly. They believe you murdered Hank Boone and his men in cold blood. They will not accept this decision quietly. What are you saying? John asked. I'm saying that while you are legally free to go, you may not be practically free to stay. The law can only protect you so much. That's not protection at all. No, it's not, but it's the best I can offer. Judge Harlan nodded to Wilson. Release them. Wilson unlocked the cells. Mary stepped out into the hallway and her legs nearly gave out. John caught her arm and steadied her. Thank you, Judge, Mary said. Don't thank me yet. You have a long road ahead. Judge Harlan collected his things. I suggest you leave town as quickly and quietly as possible. The longer you stay, the more danger you're in. He left. Wilson handed them their belongings, Mary's gun, John's rifle, the few coins they'd had in their pockets. He's right, Wilson said. You should go, today. What about my ranch? Mary asked. What about it? You can't work it alone, and no one in this town is going to help you, not after what happened. Then I'll work it alone. Dr. Wilson shook his head. You're as stubborn as your mother was. That stubbornness got her killed too. Get out of my way, Sheriff. Wilson stepped aside. Mary and John walked out of the jail into the bright morning sun. People on the street stopped and stared. A woman pulled her children close. A man spat in the dirt. They walked to the general store to buy supplies. The storekeeper served them but wouldn't meet their eyes. He took their money without a word and practically threw their purchases at them. Outside, 3 men were waiting. Mary recognized them, friends of Hank's. Men who'd sat at his table. Men who'd profited from his schemes. The tallest one stepped forward. You got some nerve showing your face here, girl. This is my town. I have every right to be here. Your town, he laughed. This was Hank's town, and you killed him. He tried to kill me first. That's not how we see it. John put down the supplies and faced the 3 men. You got a problem, say it plain. Our problem is you're both still breathing. We aim to correct that. Try it. The man's hand moved toward his gun. John was faster. He had his revolver out and cocked before the man's fingers touched leather. Go ahead, John said quietly. Give me a reason. The man froze. His 2 companions backed up a step. That's what I thought. John kept his gun leveled, Pound. Now here's how this is going to work. We're leaving town, we're taking our supplies, and we're going back to the ranch. And if anyone follows us, if anyone so much as rides in our direction, I will kill them. No warning, no second chances. I will put a bullet in their head and sleep fine that night. Everyone understand? The men nodded slowly. Good. John holstered his gun and picked up the supplies. Mary, let's go. They walked to their horses and rode out of town. Mary didn't look back, didn't want to see the faces, didn't want to remember this place. The ride back to John's cabin was quiet. When they arrived, Mary saw the destruction from the gunfight. Bullet holes in the walls, broken windows, bloodstains on the porch. I can't stay here, John said. Too many memories. Then come with me to my ranch. Help me rebuild. Mary, I need you. I can't do this alone. John looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, we'll go together, but we do this right, legal, proper. No one's gonna accuse us of anything improper. What are you saying? I'm saying we get married. Mary's eyes went wide. What? Not because I'm expecting anything, not because there's any feeling involved, but because it'll give you protection, give me legal standing to help run the ranch, and it'll shut up anyone who wants to gossip. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. Probably, but it makes sense. Mary studied his face. He was serious. Dead serious. You'd do that, marry me, just to protect my reputation. I'd do a lot worse to keep you safe. Mary felt something crack open in her chest, something warm and frightening and altogether too large. All right, she said, we'll do it, but on one condition. What's that? Someday when all this is over, when we're safe and the ranch is thriving and we don't have to fight anymore, ask me again, properly, because maybe by then it won't just be for protection. John's expression softened. Maybe. They gathered what they could from the cabin and rode toward the Ellison ranch. As they crested the hill and saw the house below, Mary felt her heart clench. Home. After everything, she was finally going home. They rode down into the valley. Hank's men were gone. The place looked abandoned. Mary dismounted and walked slowly to the front door. Her hand shook as she reached for the handle. John came up beside her. Want me to go first? No, this is mine. I need to do it. She opened the door and stepped inside. The house smelled stale. Whiskey bottles littered the floor. Dirty dishes filled the sink. Hank and his men had lived like animals here, but underneath it all, Mary could still smell her mama. Lavender, bread, home. We'll clean it, John said. Make it right again. Mary walked through the rooms. The furniture was the same. The curtains still hung in the windows. In her old bedroom, she found her mother's quilt folded on the bed. She picked it up and held it to her face. The tears came then, all at once. Everything she'd been holding back for weeks poured out of her in great wrenching sobs. John appeared in the doorway. He didn't say anything, just stood there and let her cry. When she finally stopped, Mary wiped her face and looked at him. I'm okay. I know you are. No, I mean, I'm really okay. For the first time in a long time, I'm going to be okay. John smiled. It was a real smile this time. Not sad, not bitter, just genuine. Yeah, I think you are. They spent the rest of the day cleaning, throwing out bottles, washing dishes, scrubbing floors. By evening, the house looked like a home again. They ate dinner on the porch as the sun set. Neither of them spoke much. They were too tired for words. Finally, Mary broke the silence. Tomorrow, we start rebuilding. Tomorrow, we start rebuilding, John agreed. It's going to be hard. Most things worth doing are. We might fail. We might. But we'll try anyway. Yeah, John looked at her. We'll try anyway. Mary leaned back against the porch post and looked up at the stars. They were coming out now, one by one, filling the sky with light. Her mother had loved the stars, had taught Mary all the constellations. Looking up at them now, Mary felt like maybe her mama was still out there somewhere, watching, waiting to see what her daughter would do next. She was going to make her proud, Whatever it took, however long it took, she was going to make her proud. The first week was the hardest. Mary and John worked from sunup to sundown repairing fences, clearing out the debris Hank's men had left behind, and trying to bring the ranch back to life. The cattle had scattered during the chaos, but they managed to round up about half of them. The rest were probably sold off or stolen. Mary's hands blistered and bled, but she didn't stop. Every nail she hammered felt like reclaiming something stolen. Every fence post she set felt like planting a flag in ground that was rightfully hers. John worked beside her without complaint. He didn't talk much, but his presence was steady, reliable. When Mary's strength failed, he picked up the slack. When she wanted to quit, he kept working until shame drove her back to her feet. On the 8th day, they rode into town together. They needed supplies, and there was no avoiding it forever. The general store went silent when they walked in. Every eye turned toward them. Mary lifted her chin and walked to the counter. "I need flour, salt, coffee, and nails. I can pay." The storekeeper looked past her like she wasn't there. "Store's closed. Your sign says you're open, not to you." Mary felt anger rise in her throat, but John put a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go," he said quietly. "No." Mary slapped her coins on the counter. "I have money. You have goods. That's how this works. I don't serve murderers." "Then you must not serve half the men in this town, because they've all got blood on their hands." A man near the back of the store stepped forward. It was one of the men who'd confronted them before. "You need to leave." "Or what?" "Or we'll make you leave." John's hand moved to his gun. "You can try." The tension in the room pulled tight. Mary could feel it about to snap. Then a voice spoke from the doorway. "That's enough." Everyone turned. An older woman stood there. Mary recognized her Mrs. Chen, who ran the boarding house. Her husband had died in the war, and she'd raised 3 children alone. "This girl has done nothing wrong," Mrs. Chen said. "Judge ruled it was self-defense. That should be the end of it." "Stay out of this, Margaret," the storekeeper said. "I will not. Hank Boone was a snake, and everyone in this room knows it. He killed Martha Ellison, beat this girl near to death. And when she fought back, you all want to punish her for it." Mrs. Chen walked to the counter and stood beside Mary. "Sell her what she needs, or I'll take my business elsewhere. And I'll tell every woman in town to do the same." The storekeeper's face went red. "You can't." "I can, and I will." Mrs. Chen crossed her arms. "Your choice." The storekeeper looked around the room, but found no support. Finally, he sighed and started gathering the supplies Mary had requested. "Thank you," Mary whispered to Mrs. Chen. "Don't thank me yet. This town's got a long memory and a short supply of forgiveness. You're going to have a hard road ahead." "I know." Mrs. Chen studied her face. "But you're strong, like your mother. She'd be proud of you." Mary felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I hope so." They paid for the supplies and left. As they loaded the goods onto their wagon, Mrs. Chen approached again. "I heard you two got married. That true?" Mary glanced at John. They'd gone to the preacher 3 days ago. A quick ceremony with no guests, just words spoken and a paper signed. "Yes, ma'am." "Good, that'll help." Mrs. Chen lowered her voice. "But be careful, there's talk. Some of Boone's friends are still angry. They're not going to let this go. We can handle ourselves." "I'm sure you can, but handling yourself and being safe are 2 different things." She squeezed Mary's hand. "Watch your back, child." She walked away. Mary and John climbed onto the wagon and rode back to the ranch in silence. That night, as they ate dinner, Mary finally spoke. "She's right, they're not going to stop." "I know." "So what do we do?" John pushed beans around his plate. "We keep our guns close. We take turns sleeping. We don't go anywhere alone. That's not a life, that's survival. Sometimes that's the best you can hope for." Mary threw her fork down. "I'm tired of hoping for the best. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder every second of every day." "What do you want me to say? That it'll get better? That one day they'll forget and leave us alone? I don't know if that's true." Then we make it true. We work this land. We build something good. We show them that we're not going anywhere." John looked at her across the table. "You really believe that'll work?" "I have to believe it, because if I don't, then Hank won. He's dead, but he still won." John was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, we do it your way. We build something good." They shook hands across the table like business partners sealing a deal. But when Mary's hand touched John's, she felt something pass between them, something more than agreement. She pulled her hand back quickly and stood. "I'm going to bed. You take first watch." "Mary." But she was already walking away, her heart pounding for reasons she didn't want to examine. Weeks turned into months. Spring gave way to summer and the ranch began to thrive. The cattle fattened on good grass. The garden Mary planted yielded vegetables. They hired a hand, a young Mexican boy named Miguel, whose family worked a neighboring spread. He was quiet and hard-working and asked no questions about what had happened. Slowly, painfully, the ranch began to feel like a home again, but the threat never went away completely. Sometimes Mary would see riders on the ridge watching them. Sometimes they'd find fences cut or supplies missing. Nothing major, just enough to remind them they weren't welcome. John never talked about it, but Mary noticed he started drinking more. Not falling down drunk, but enough to blur the edges, enough to help him sleep. One night she found him on the porch with a half-empty bottle beside him. The moon was full and bright. He was staring out at the prairie like he could see something she couldn't. Mary sat down beside him. "You're thinking about leaving. How'd you know?" "Because I know you. You're thinking this is too hard, that I'd be better off without you." John took a drink. "Maybe you would be." "Don't." Mary's voice was sharp. "Don't you dare decide what's best for me. I've had enough men trying to do that." "I'm not like them." "Then stop acting like them. Stop drinking yourself numb every night. Stop pulling away." John looked at her. His eyes were bloodshot and tired. "I'm no good for you, Mary. I'm broken. Have been for a long time." "So I'm broken too. We're both broken. Maybe that's okay." "It's not okay. You deserve better. I deserve to make my own choices, and I choose you." Mary took the bottle from his hands and set it aside. "I choose this. Us, whatever we are. We're not anything. We got married on paper, that's all. Is it?" John didn't answer. Mary moved closer until their shoulders touched. "Tell me you don't feel anything," she said. "Tell me this is just convenience, just protection. Tell me and I'll believe you." John opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. "I thought so." Mary stood. "I'm going to bed. You coming?" "We don't share a bed." "I know, but maybe we should. Maybe that's part of rebuilding, too." She walked inside. Behind her, she heard John's sharp intake of breath, heard him stand, heard his footsteps follow her. That night, they lay side by side in the darkness, not touching, barely breathing. But they were together, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Mary felt something like peace. The trouble came in August. Mary was working in the garden when she heard horses, a lot of them. She looked up and saw 6 riders coming down the path. Her stomach dropped when she recognized the leader, Sheriff Wilson. But this wasn't a friendly visit. His face was grim, and he had a deputy with him, along with 4 other men Mary didn't recognize. John appeared from the barn, his rifle in his hands. Miguel came running from the corral. Wilson dismounted slowly. "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter." "Sheriff." John's voice was flat. "What brings you out here?" "Got some questions about Hank Boone's estate." "What about it?" "Seems there's some dispute about property lines. These men here are representing Boone's creditors. They say he owned this land free and clear, say the deed was valid." Mary felt ice flood her veins. "That deed was declared invalid. Judge Harlan burned it." "Judge Harlan's dead." The words hit like a punch. Mary actually staggered. "What?" John's voice was deadly quiet. "Found him in his hotel room 3 days ago. Heart attack, the doctor said. Very sudden." "Convenient timing," John said. That's what I thought too, but I'm not a doctor. Wilson pulled out papers. These men have a new deed, signed by Boone before he died. It predates the one Mary signed. That's impossible, Mary said. My mother never— Your mother's signature is on it, witnessed and notarized. It's a forgery, maybe, but without Judge Harlan here to rule on it, it goes to the circuit court, and that won't convene for another 3 months. One of the creditors stepped forward. He was fat and sweating in the heat. Until the court decides this property is in dispute, which means you can't work it, can't sell it, can't do nothing with it. This is my home, Mary said. You can't just take it. We're not taking it, we're protecting it for the rightful owners. John raised his rifle. Get off our land. Mr. Carter, I'd advise you not to threaten these men. They're here on legal business. Legal business? Like when you brought Mary back to Hank? Like when you looked the other way while he beat her? Wilson's face went red. I'm trying to do this peaceful. No, you're trying to steal what's hers, again. John cocked the rifle. Now get off our land, or I swear to God I'll shoot every one of you. The creditors backed toward their horses, but Wilson held his ground. You fire that rifle and you'll hang. All your self-defense claims won't save you this time. Maybe, but you'll be dead. So what do I care? They stared at each other. Mary could see the calculation in Wilson's eyes. He was weighing whether John would really pull the trigger. Finally, Wilson raised his hands. We'll go, but this isn't over. Those men will be back with a court order. Let them come. Wilson and the others mounted up and rode away. Miguel ran back to the corral. Mary stood frozen until they disappeared over the ridge. Then her legs gave out. John caught her and helped her to the porch. She sat down hard, her whole body shaking. They're going to take it, she whispered. Everything, all of it. No, they're not. How can you stop them? They killed the judge. They forged documents. They own the sheriff. What chance do we have? John knelt in front of her. Listen to me. We've been through worse than this. We've survived things that should have killed us, and we're still here, still fighting. I'm tired of fighting. I know, but we can't stop now. He took her hands. You said we were going to build something good, something that would make your mother proud. We haven't done that yet. Maybe we can't. Maybe, but I'm not ready to quit. Are you— Mary looked at him, really looked at him, at this man who'd saved her life, who'd married her to protect her, who'd stayed when anyone else would have run. No, she said, I'm not ready to quit. Then we fight one more time, and this time we fight smart. What do you mean? I mean we get proof. Real proof that the deed is forged. We find out who killed Judge Harlan. We expose everyone who's part of this corruption. How? John smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. By doing what I do best, becoming someone they don't see coming. The next 3 days, John was gone. He rode into town each morning and didn't return until dark. He wouldn't tell Mary what he was doing, just said to trust him. On the 4th day, he came back with a man Mary had never seen before. He was young, maybe 25, with ink-stained fingers and intelligent eyes. Mary, this is Thomas Brennan. He's a reporter for the Austin newspaper. I told him your story. Brennan pulled out a notebook. Mrs. Carter, I'd like to ask you some questions about everything that happened with Hank Boone, about the judge, about the corruption in this town. Mary looked at John. You think anyone will care? They'll care when they read it in print, Brennan said. The public has a right to know when the law is being bought and sold like cattle. So Mary told him everything, about her mother's death, about Hank's abuse, about the deed and the shooting and Judge Harlan's ruling, about how the judge had died suspiciously and now new documents had appeared claiming her land. Brennan wrote it all down. When she finished, he looked up with fire in his eyes. This is bigger than I thought. This isn't just about one ranch. This is about a whole system of corruption. Can you prove it? John asked. I can try. I'll need to talk to people in town, get statements, follow the money. Be careful, Mary said. These men are dangerous. I know, but sometimes the only way to fight dangerous men is to shine a light on them, make them afraid of being seen. Brennan stayed at the ranch for a week. He interviewed Miguel. He rode into town and talked to Mrs. Chen and other people who'd witnessed what happened. He dug through land records and financial documents, and slowly, piece by piece, he put together a story of how Hank Boone and his associates had been stealing land and killing anyone who stood in their way for years. Mary's mother wasn't the only victim. There were others, families who'd lost their ranches under suspicious circumstances, people who died of accidents or illness right before their property was sold. When Brennan showed them his notes, Mary felt sick. All these people, she whispered, all these lives destroyed. And no one stopped it because everyone was too afraid, Brennan said. But you stopped it, you fought back, and that's the story people need to hear. 2 weeks later, the article appeared in the Austin newspaper. It was front page, 6 columns detailing the corruption in their small town, naming names, showing evidence. The response was immediate and explosive. The governor ordered an investigation. State marshals arrived and started making arrests. Sheriff Wilson was removed from office. The men claiming to be Boone's creditors were charged with fraud and conspiracy to murder. The forged deed was exposed for what it was. Mary's ownership of the ranch was confirmed beyond any doubt, and suddenly the town that had shunned them was falling over itself to apologize. But Mary didn't care about apologies. She cared about the fact that it was over, really over. She stood on the porch one morning watching the sun rise and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. John came out and stood beside her. He handed her a cup of coffee. "It's done," he said. "Yeah. How do you feel?" Mary thought about it. Tired, relieved, angry that it took this long, grateful that it's finally over. You should be proud. You did something most people never have the courage to do. You stood up to power and you won. We won, not just me. John shrugged. You did the hard part. I just kept you alive long enough to see it through. Mary turned to look at him. You did more than that. You gave me hope when I had none. You taught me to fight. You stayed when you could have walked away 100 times. She paused. You saved me. And you saved me right back. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the prairie turn gold in the morning light. A hawk circled overhead. Somewhere cattle lowed. So what now? John asked. Now we live. We work this land. We make it thrive. We build the life my mother wanted me to have. Sounds good. Mary took a breath. Her heart was hammering, but she made herself say it. And maybe we stop pretending this marriage is just on paper. John went very still. Mary, you said to ask you again properly, when this was all over, when we were safe. She turned to face him fully. Well, it's over. We're safe. So I'm asking, do you want this to be real? Do you want us to be real? John looked at her for a long moment. She could see the war happening behind his eyes, the fear of wanting something, the fear of losing it. Finally, he spoke. I've been alone a long time. I'm not sure I remember how to be anything else. Then we'll figure it out together. We're good at figuring things out. What if I let you down? Then you let me down and we deal with it, like we deal with everything else. Mary reached out and took his hand. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to try. John looked down at their joined hands. When he looked back up, his eyes were wet. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, I want to try. Mary smiled. It felt strange on her face, like she'd forgotten how, but it also felt right. Good, because you're stuck with me now. I can think of worse fates. They stood together on the porch as the sun climbed higher. The day stretched out before them, full of work and possibility. The cattle needed tending, the garden needed weeding. There were 100 small tasks that made up the daily rhythm of ranch life. But for just this moment, they stood still and let themselves feel it. The weight lifting, the fear fading, the future opening up before them like the endless Texas prairie. 6 months later, Mary rode her mother's old mare through the fields. The mare was getting old, but she still had spirit, still knew her way across every inch of the land. The ranch was thriving. They'd hired 2 more hands and brought in a new herd. The house had been repaired and painted. Mary had planted roses along the fence line like her mother used to have. She rode up to the hill where her mother was buried. The grave was well tended now, fresh flowers every week, a proper headstone John had ordered from Austin. Mary dismounted and knelt beside the grave. She brushed dust off the stone. "I did it, Mama," she said softly. "I got our land back. I made it ours again. I made it good." The wind picked up and sent her hair flying. It felt like an answer. "I miss you. Every day I miss you. But I'm okay now. Better than okay." She smiled. "I met someone good. Someone who sees me for who I am and doesn't try to change me. I think you'd like him." She stayed there for a long time just talking, telling her mother everything that had happened, everything she'd learned, everything she'd become. When she finally stood, the sun was starting to set. She looked out over the land, the rolling hills, the grazing cattle, the house with smoke rising from the chimney. Home, really and truly home. She rode back as twilight fell. John was on the porch waiting for her. He'd started doing that, waiting for her to come home, making sure she was safe. "How was your ride?" he asked. "Good. I visited Mama's grave." "How's she doing?" Mary smiled at the gentle joke. "She's proud of me. I can feel it." John pulled her close. She let herself lean against him, let herself feel the solid warmth of him. "I'm proud of you too," he said into her hair. Yeah, you're the strongest person I've ever met. The bravest, the most stubborn." He pulled back to look at her. "The best thing that ever happened to me." Mary felt tears sting her eyes, happy tears this time. "Say that again." "The best thing that ever happened to me." She kissed him then, soft and gentle and full of promise. When they broke apart, they were both smiling. "Come on," John said. "Dinner's ready." They went inside together. Miguel had already set the table. They ate and talked and laughed. The conversation flowed easy, natural, like family. After dinner, Mary went out to the porch one more time. She looked up at the stars. They were coming out now, bright and clear against the darkening sky. She found the constellations her mother had taught her, Orion, Cassiopeia, the Big Dipper. Behind her, she heard John moving in the house, heard Miguel saying goodnight and heading to the bunkhouse, heard all the small sounds of people living their lives. She'd fought for this, bled for it, nearly died for it. And it was worth it. Every single moment was worth it, because she was free. The land was hers. The future was hers. Her life was hers to shape however she wanted, and she wasn't afraid anymore. John came out and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "You'll catch cold." "I'm fine." "I know, but humor me." She leaned back against him and they stood together watching the stars multiply across the sky. The night settled around them soft and quiet. Tomorrow there would be work. There would always be work. But tonight they could rest. Tonight they could just be. 2 broken people who'd found each other in the darkness and built something good from the ruins. 2 survivors who'd refused to quit, even when quitting would have been easier. 2 fighters who'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is save one life, and the hardest thing to learn is that you're worth saving. Mary closed her eyes and let herself feel it all. The pain, the triumph, the love, the hope. And standing there under the vast Texas sky with John's arms around her and her mother's land beneath her feet, Mary Ellison Carter finally understood what her mother had always known, that home isn't just a place you defend. It's a life you choose, a future you build, and a love you fight for with everything you have, until your last breath leaves your body and the stars welcome you home.